traffic signals, and they're still online, so we just never know when power's going to disappear. So welcome to this broadcast anyway. Twitter people, please retweet. Facebook, please like and share. Like and share. What must I do? Like and share. Also, people on YouTube, welcome. All you can do is watch. And on Haps, hello the Haps people. Hello. Remember, you can click hearts to send love. And also remember, you may ask any questions you like. However, there are 3 rules. There are kindness, dignity, and respect towards myself, towards whomsoever I am interviewing, and of course towards my guests, right? If you don't know what kindness, dignity, and respect are, imagine if your mother was standing behind you while you type whatever it is. If she would smack you in the chops, don't write it. Because if you do, I'm deleting it and blocking you. And if you don't like my rules, don't watch it. Okay? I'm tired of people saying, yes, I'm mean to people. Yes, I'm mean to idiots. If you are raised by wolves, you are not welcome on my channel. And I'm very fair to everybody. Yes, very fair. All right. Also, just to answer some questions in my ongoing elections 2021 coverage, every single party that I could get my paws on has been invited, and only some of them have replied. The Democratic Alliance has replied. The ANC has replied. The Good Party replied and said they don't want me. Thank you for asking. The Al Jama'ah Party applied and replied. Paul Jacobson of the Freedom Front phoned me. I've also interviewed. Who else have I interviewed? Oh, pretty much anybody. Anybody has got free access to me. Okay, so if you are a political party and you are running in the country, please message me, and I am happy to put you on. Okay, so please stop sending me messages. You're just doing things for the DA. I'm not. I'm apolitical. I do, however, have a message for the local elections. Please go and vote. That's my message. Please go and vote. Okay, so I'm going to swap the camera. I'm going to show you somebody that you know already. Ladles and jelly spoons. I introduce the one and only Ms. Nicola Jowell, who is the incumbent and sitting ward councillor, sitting down ward councillor for Ward 54, which is the one where I live here in the Point of the Sea. And she is standing for re-election. Is this your third term?
No, I've only done half a term.
Half a term, okay. So your term and a half. And this nice lady is standing to be your representative in the neighborhood of Sea Point, Fresnay, Banshee Bay, Clifton, Buckwiffen, Robben Island, weirdly.
Correct.
Camps Bay, and Greenpoint, part of Greenpoint.
So not Greenpoint, but the boundary of the ward is extended, and so this time the elections we will include Mully Point and Three Anchor Bay. So previously those sections weren't in the ward, but the boundaries are changing.
Okay, so tell me more about, right, so let's start at the very beginning. You are the person who represents the ruling party for this province, right? Okay, so just to explain to people from other countries, there are 9 provinces. This one is the only one governed by the official opposition, the Democratic Alliance. It does not mean necessarily that every ward in that, or shall we say every suburb or every area of voting will automatically be DA, because that is why we have elections. So this area where we are, Ward 54, if I am not mistaken, has almost always been very strong with the DA.
Correct. Let me take a step back and say hello.
Yes.
Hi, James, and
hello
to the viewers. You're correct. 9 provinces in South Africa. Western Cape is the only Democratic Alliance province, although we're always pushing to change that. And the city of Cape Town has been a Democratic Alliance for quite some time. We have the majority in the city council, 152 seats out of the total of 231 seats in the council are ours. So we've got a combination of ward councillors and public proportional representation councillors, PR councillors.
So what does that mean? Sorry, just explain, please.
So it is again a bit confusing. So the 116 wards in the city, each one you elect a ward councillor. You elect on the ballot that person by their name, and they generally stand for a party or they're independent. Then you have a second ballot in which you vote for a party, and the parties are then done alphabetically by name. And what happens at the election is they combine all the ward ballots and the PR ballots together, and then they look at total number and the proportions of that total vote that each political party gets, and that determines how many PR seats the parties get.
Is this for the local government area?
That's the local government elections.
So that is for the city of Cape, or the province of the Western Cape?
No, the city of Cape Town.
So there's the city of Cape Town Parliament, for want of a better word. There's the provincial parliament, and there's national parliament.
Correct. So there's three levels
There's three
of government.
levels, yeah.
There's the Cape Town municipality, then there's the provincial government, and then there's a national government. So this only applies to the Cape Town municipality, and those PR seats become then additional seats that represent the political party that you vote for. So no vote is lost in an election. Every vote that you cast on the ward ballot and the PR ballot is really crucial because they're added together and determine how many PR seats a party gets.
Are you telling us there's 3 sections in the ballot?
There's 2.
Just tell the people what it's going to look like.
There are 2 separate ballots, and it's going to be long. There's quite a lot of parties. So there's 2 separate ballots.
There's 32, aren't there?
In this ward, there's 32. So we'll have a ward ballot with 32 names, alphabetical according to the person's surname. So look for the J, Jowell, on that ward ballot.
Shameless
I
self-promotion.
had to slip that
You
in
should
there.
be ashamed of yourself. It's almost as if you're using the channel to promote a cause.
Never. And then the second ballot is the PR, proportional representation. And trust me, before I entered politics, I thought it was public relations ballot, but it's the PR, proportional representation. And that's your second ballot, and that's done alphabetically according to the political party. And I think that there are 80 or so political parties on there for the entire city of Cape Town. So you'll see a lot of names on there that you may not be familiar with in this ward, and you'll select your political party of choice.
Okay, so now just explain to the people. Sorry, DA Atlantic Seaboard Branch.
Yes.
Right. Okay, got it. So I'm just looking on your own phone.
On my phone, you make yourself at home there,
I know.
James.
That's a little bit weird for people.
There's
but
no secrets.
As we speak, we're sharing. And I'm sharing for you.
Yeah.
Oh, Nicola Jowell, Word 54. Boom.
There we
you
go.
are
You
shared.
found me.
You are totally shared. Okay, so now let's start at the very beginning. What are the hot issues that you think, because obviously now I can speak to you about why people should vote specifically for you at this particular time. So what do you think are the hot issues in, let's just say, for want of a better word, Seapoint?
Okay, number one, I think on everybody's mind is the concern around the number of homeless in the area. I think that's been the case for quite some time, long before my tenure as the ward councillor. I was chatting to a previous ward councillor this morning as well, saying, a lot of that is pre-existing for a long time as well. But nevertheless, it is a big worry to residents, both from a concern around the impact on service delivery, property prices, and also on humanitarian grounds for people living on the streets. And that's obviously got much worse during COVID, but it's pre-existing. In the Sea Point area itself, there's been a lot of work to bring the numbers down and to assist people off the street into long-term sustainable options. And we've had very fast reactions from law enforcement in the ward, as well as we've had a great team from social development who who engage with the homeless on a day-to-day basis. So when I started, we had one field worker who used to work from the city, who used to work up and down the Atlantic seaboard. We really pushed hard on that, and we've got 15 field workers. So that's a massive increase in the numbers to assist the homeless during my term to come off the streets into options, shelters, a city safe space, ideally reunified with families if that's possible. That's really number one. And then to get people...
I'm sorry, I do want to interrupt and say that there have been some successes in that.
There have been a lot of successes. We cannot force people into taking up the
and
option.
That is, people need to know that is a constitutional issue.
Absolutely, they have a constitutional right to refuse and freedom of movement, but obviously we encourage. And sometimes you have to work with that same person for a long time until you get a yes answer. Sometimes people are very willing to come off the streets quite quickly, but you have to keep at it. You can never say that I've engaged that person once before, they're a no, and that's done. It's really got to continue to happen. So we've had a lot of successes through that program, and there's a lot of partners who help with that as well. The SIDS field worker has been amazing.
So let's just explain to me.
Sorry, the Sea Point City Improvement District.
Yes.
Who operate on the main road.
Who's the person who runs that?
Heather Tager is
Hang on a second. Hi Heather, it's James. I have tried for years to get hold of you. I would so adore for you to come on here so that we can explain to people how well you guys do your job. And I'm not doing a fluffing piece here, but your guys have been exceptionally helpful. Your chaps who walk up and down the street, to me personally, on more than one occasion. Please, Heather Tager, get hold of James. Okay. I mean, I hope that that's going to work, because I've tried the phone, the email, the WhatsApp, and the messages, and nothing happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they've been fantastic, and their field worker is excellent. And the Ratepayers Association have also got a program which they started last year with the field workers they employ, who's assisted many homeless people off off the streets into what they call Project Hope, which is taking people who've been previously homeless, providing shelter through the city's safe spaces or the shelter networks, and then giving employment through localized jobs here. And those are really positive interventions. We've also had our second city safe space opened during that term, which is really important. There's other ones that have opened as well out in the Belleville area, but having another one opened here, accessible to assist
Where
the
is
homeless
that?
in town in Coolumbo.
Okay.
And the city is not actually allowed to fund shelters per se because of the constitutional requirements and the levels of government. So they've got around it by creating transitionary sleeping spaces, which are the safe spaces. So it's a transition between the street and a formal shelter or home.
Like a halfway house.
Almost, yeah, but it's safe. There's toilet facilities there. There's storage. There's access to social development, health services, PWP positions, etc. So it's really about trying to get somebody off the street, help with an ID, all those things to try and prevent them from coming back onto the streets again. So the real solutions to homelessness is through social development. And we've also set up a sub-council social development forum, which I think has been really positive, and I'm looking forward to that carrying on because we've brought together the NGOs who work in the ward, and we've also brought together the community organizations like the City Improvement District and the ratepayers and Camps Bay groups as well. Everybody's working on projects, and we said, right, what's your experiences? What's your really taking all of that information and putting it together, and I really hope we get to that point where we're going to go to the province and go, right, this is what you guys are doing, but we need you to do X, Y, and Z. And the same for the city and the same for national government. And say, this is working, this is not, and what's practical on the ground, and really try to address it and maybe re-look at what's going on, because I do think it needs that.
Okay, so my next question to you is, in terms of this particular issue that you say is a hot issue, the homelessness slash, what should we say? I never like to say. I know you know, but maybe other people don't know. Let me just change the camera. That hi everybody. So you guys may not be aware, but some of you who've watched me for times and times will be aware that I grew up extraordinarily wealthy, but I, as a result of childhood sexual and physical abuse, had 12 and a half years of homelessness. I showered every day during that time. My clothes were clean. Very few people knew, but I stayed awake for sometimes 4 or 5 days. And if I ended up in somebody's house, I was locked in rooms. I was raped. Some really horrible things happened. So I never use the word homeless because it is always a judgment that goes with that. I like to say the word displaced. And I also would like to just point out that it can happen literally to anybody, especially during this crazy cray time of quote unquote corona, which has caused so many things to shift and change. So it isn't just a person that you might be traditionally looking down on. It could literally be your neighbor, your friend, your cousin, your co-worker. It's a very serious thing. So the homeless issue in Sea Point seems to be something that your political party, strangely, and I don't quite understand it, is personally blamed for. So that seems to be, and it's an ongoing attack that has come through. In addition to that coming through, there's been an ongoing attack about the DA is responsible for all the sewage in the streets. The DA is responsible for, yeah, I'm waiting for somebody to say, and I mean this not in a jocular way, but I'm waiting for somebody to say that you guys should do something about the Cape Doctor, the high winds, the southeaster, yeah? So I think that's just normal rhetoric that goes on. But in terms of this particular area that we live in, what are the hot issues that you yourself have been working towards apart from the displaced persons issue?
Okay.
What else is there that you have done?
Yeah. Can I just add one more thing on this
Yeah.
space before we move on, and to say that I think COVID also made a lot of people realize that so many people are a paycheck away from being displaced themselves.
Oh,
And
24 hours.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think it's really brought home that to a lot of residents who've appealed on a day-to-day basis, have been unable to pay rates or water, and we've helped so many people in the Sea Point area apply for indigent rate rebates and pensioner rate rebates so that they can get those rebates that are available to ease with the economic pressure at the moment. But it is a very tricky one. So I think many the other issues that we've had here, and I think that there's a strong focus on our public open spaces. We need to protect those, preserve them, and upgrade them.
Oh, we're talking about the
So-
Sea Point Promenade,
So talking about the promenade,
the parks.
parks, but the promenade gets a lot of attention, and we've seen the massive investment with the new lawns that have gone in there. It took a while after the drought, and while we still had water restrictions, to do the phase 1 of the lawn and the phase 2, and so that really changed that. I love the fact that we again have public art on the promenade, which I think brings it to life and creates so much interest.
And something other than those ghastly sunglasses. I never got the point, but okay.
And then, but we've got we've got a lot of community
I love
parks
how you
as
don't
well.
respond to that. Can I just say, born in the bread and butter politician? Thank you, James. We acknowledge your comments. Yeah, we acknowledge it. Thank you for your feedback, James.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's go back to those community parks.
Yes, let's go back to the good things. Yeah.
So, a lot of community parks which also need TLC and care and attention and upgrade. So we've got plans. We're busy with looking at one in Bantry Bay at the moment. We've done smaller projects, and it's great when the community partners with us on that. And I think what we'll see in Bantry Bay Park happening is great collaboration with the community and city parks coming on board, and ward allocation funding as well, because we have to preserve those places for the benefit of everybody. Then there's other issues that, of course, are a problem here. Development, increase in development. We've seen recently this issue around a demolition permit that's been granted for a building next to the fire station, and I think there's absolutely a lot of frustration around that and a lot of anger. Someone saying to me today, how angry he was about it. And ironically, as a ward councillor, we don't even get involved in that public participation. They don't send it to us. It's dealt with by Provincial Western Cape Heritage, who make those determinations. It's not a city level.
And then you get the blame.
Absolutely. But, it's a worry. It's a big worry, because not only you want to preserve the fabric of the area, but also you don't want anything that's becoming too out of character or too large or too bulk. But one of the changes that happened last year was the transport department changing the public transport maps for the entire city, which meant that anything around my city bus stop, any development around there, was no longer required to have off-street parking provided. So you could have a building that went up with 100 units and no off-street parking.
Wow.
So that was a massive change across the city. And as soon as we found out about it, with the support of the Ratepayers Association, we've driven that issue. I've single-handedly been at the department's throat about it since it was discovered. And we've pushed and pushed and pushed until finally succeeding to get that halted. And I think that's pivotal, because there's a narrative that, as ward councillors, and particularly as a DA councillor, that we don't want to, really challenge the status quo or take on hard issues. I think that really demonstrates that's not the case. That the community came with an issue that was of massive concern, and as a ward councillor, I've fought to get that changed and stopped. It will go out for public participation, which it should have done initially, and we must then relook at it and have massive community input into that, so we can really get the officials to understand the situation, understand what the community's concerns are, and where we need to go with that. But so it's never stayed away. Trying to affect change.
Okay, so I'm now going to jump right in with the uncomfortable part of the dynamic. So just FYI. One of the things that has been brought up consistently by the other parties that I've interviewed is that the party that you represent, did you see how I phrased that? Not
yes.
you.
Yes.
The party you represent has traditionally been seen as the party of rich white people. And that there is I'm not going to Cape Town a city just for very wealthy white people, and that people of color who are not as privileged, not as went to the right schools, etc., etc., have access to learning, have access to resources, are farmed out to districts and areas way outside of the city. And I'm not going to ask you to justify all of that. I just would like to ask you to just please remind people that the city was designed like that by people who were racist. The entire city was developed, spatial apartheid, in a time long before you guys came to power. So what are you guys doing as the Democratic for everybody, a city for everybody?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that let me start off by saying it's fundamentally the opposite of what the Democratic Alliance is, because I think it's the only political party that's really saying we need to create a South Africa where everybody has equal access to opportunities. So not by virtue, you don't get a job or a job opportunity or an education opportunity by virtue of your birth or your background or your schooling. That that somebody who wants to apply for a job, whether it be the city council or the province or wherever, has equal opportunity to apply for that job. So we're trying to create a society which is not looking after one small minority group. We're saying we need to be a South African looking out for each other and looking after the interests of all South Africans. So that's really the philosophy. So I agree with you.
Is that a legislative issue?
That is the policy of the Democratic Alliance.
Yeah, but I mean, how would that change? Although it isn't, racism is not entrenched towards anybody in the Constitution, but how would that actually come about?
It's about creating it's about creating education systems that give good education across the board, and creating transport networks that allow people to access transport, good public transport,
yeah, the transport
to get into jobs and to get to workplaces and education places, and creating a fair as possible playing field, acknowledging the fact that we have this history that is always going to hinder that. And so the Democratic Alliance in the city has put an emphasis on the creation of trying to create a city that deals with spatial apartheid planning. It is a long road in doing so. There are currently over 6,000 social housing opportunities that are being made available within the city centre. Those are in various stages of development, from breaking ground to planning to changes in getting approvals on the planning and still concept phase. But that's over 6,000. But that's an ongoing process. And there are vast tracts of land. There are vast tracts of land that need to be made accessible in order to really have meaningful spatial apartheid change. So we think about sites such as the Wingfield Air Base, the Arcadia Park, the Parliamentary Park, which literally can create. Thank you for that.
I just wanted to do that because we were roasting.
It's really been hot in the sun. Wow. I wasn't sure if it was your questions or the sun.
Roasting in the sun.
But those large tracts of land, because you do need economies of scale when you're dealing with creating housing issues. Those really make it impactful and meaningful in terms of the number of housing opportunities they create, and also the ability to provide them. Those massive tracts of land owned by national government, there's a massive push to get those released so that the city
can we just say that again? Land owned by the national government,
yes.
Not land owned by the province, not land owned by the city.
Correct.
Not DA land, national government land.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the really big tracts
like the
of
trains
land,
are not,
like the trains.
like the trains being a disaster zone is not the fault of the Democratic Alliance. That is a national PRASA process, which is held by the national government.
Correct. And
which the DA is trying to get control of.
So you mentioned the trains, and then it knocks on to public transport, congestion on our roads, the taxis. If we have a train system that works and that is transporting 800,000 people a day, like it should be.
Sorry, just one more time. It's 800,000 people a day.
It should be transporting. And we're down to, I think, about 60,000 people.
And you know that Grand Central Station, sorry to interrupt you, in New York, just for contrast and compare and context, Grand Central Station, New York City, one of the world's most pivotal and central railway stations, 750,000 people a day. Isn't that interesting?
That's a lot,
More people, Cape Town Station, used to be, than Grand Central.
So every person who's not on a train is
now on a minibus.
Is now on a minibus, taxi, or a bus, and that's just creating congestion on the roads. So getting a train system that works, is reliable and dependable and safe, it's essential, and essential to the functioning of the city everywhere. And when we had those terrible minibus taxi violence about 3 months ago, and I had people in Seapoint phoning me all the time saying, "What are you doing?" People, at the shops can't get to work. Our employees can't get to work. Certain services are not available in the area because people aren't able to get to work. It's incredibly frustrating because we are being held ransomed by a train system that is not functioning.
I mean, one more time, the word is hostage.
It is. We are being held hostage as a city, and I feel for the people. One person wrote to me and said, at some point they're going to have to let their employee go. And I thought, that's the last situation. Somebody who's got absolutely no influence over the system other than to vote the right way is reliant on public transport that is then failing them to have their job threatened is the worst outcome possible. And the idea that people must commute for 2 hours when we can make land available, such as Arcadia Park close by and such as sites within the periphery of the CBD, means that people can be closer to work and not have to commute for 2 hours as well, and not have the expense of that commuting. So there are manageable ways to create good low-cost housing, and they must be explored, and there are a lot of sites that are already underway.
I would like to just ask you a question. Is everybody, irrespective of race, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, nationality, status, of course, depending upon whether or not it's a legal person who can vote, welcome to the DA?
Absolutely, and I think
So
that
the DA has no, you should be, you could be, you would be. It's everybody is invited, like Samsung.
yes, everybody is invited.
Everyone's invited.
Everybody's invited and welcomed and encouraged. And we've had a lot of information tables around the area where we chat to voters over the last few weeks, and we've had people come up to us. Well, a lot of people who are permanent residents, for example, not citizens, expressing their frustration that they've been tax-paying residents of the city or the country for 30 years, but they're still not eligible to vote. But they're willing to get involved, to donate to the DA, or to volunteer with us on election day, and we're welcome to have them. Just like anybody is welcome, and I think we've shown that as a party we are inclusive. I think we are the most inclusive party in the country. And
sorry, one more time. You say you guys are the most inclusive party.
Absolutely.
Can you justify that?
I think if you look at any one of the DA rallies and you see the makeup, whether it's from every gender, every race, every identity, and there's not only about saying, our foot soldiers are multiracial, but our leadership
window
is
dressing.
Multiracial. Exactly. And that's where change happens. You don't have a all-white management structure and say we are a diverse party. You've got to have it on every single level of the organization. Exactly. Yeah. And we've got a very strong and active LGBTQI division of the DA
and
as well.
LGBTQIA, so lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, intersex, and allies.
Plus.
Yeah.
And very active as well. So, I think it's very important that the DA has always focused on everybody, any religion, any sexual orientation, background, how they identify, have found a home in the DA.
So my question to you is, obviously, you would like people to vote for the party you're representing. But in terms of voting at all, do you feel that people are... Sorry, I just got handed a message that the chap inside the restaurant would love to chat to you afterwards.
I do know him. I've met
him. There you go.
I met him as a...
It's like you're famous.
I met him for coffee down there just after I became a ward councillor,
No
right
way.
in the early days. So yes, I won't say his name, but yeah.
Well, I'm sure he doesn't mind.
Well, Mr. Adams, and we've had a couple of conversations since then. So it's what I've loved about this job is meeting people 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
We still keep in contact. We've had coffee. We communicate, bump into each other on the streets here. It's really fantastic.
So basically, it's a very social thing, you're saying.
It's very social. I was invited last night to an event with actually somebody's birthday party, but they just felt how great it would be to engage and chat on a social level in the ward with other people from the ward, and it's really lovely. I've very enjoyed that. There have been great friendships made, and I think for me what has been a highlight as well is the partnerships with the ratepayers associations, the CIBS, the CPF.
People don't know the acronyms.
What I've also learned in government and council, you're talking a lot of acronyms at the end of the day. People kind of look at you going, what are you talking about? So we all have to have a reminder to step back a little bit, back to basics. And that's been really powerful for me, those partnerships, because it's just a reminder that together we can just achieve so much more. It's positive, bringing people in rather than excluding and keeping people out is the way to go about it. And I think that's the primary role of the ward councillor. It really, one has to do that.
Okay, so now I just want to check and see. We keep having... Hang on a second, I have to apologize to viewers. Hi viewers, I just need to tell you, I'm awfully sorry. I keep getting messages that the signal is up and down. I would just like to say thank you, Vodacom, for that. We are outside and there is no obstruction. There's no concrete or iron or steel surrounding us. We are in the street, pretty much, on the pavement. So I'm doing my best, you guys. If it gets really bad, please tell me. And also, I'm very surprised that you guys have not asked any questions. You guys need to ask questions, like and share as well, like and share. And remember that you may ask any questions of myself or Nicola, and obviously she will attempt to answer. And if it is after the broadcast, I'll screenshot it and send it to her and she can pop on and... Is that okay? Okay, yeah. And she can ask questions. So remember, guys, please ask some questions, yeah? All right, so back to you. What I need to just find out from you is, Why should somebody choose to vote for you? As we said, 32 parties in this area, not the least of which is the EFF, the ANC, the Al Jama'ah, Paul Jacobson of the Freedom Front, as well as the Democratic Alliance and big players. And then not so big players who are, oh, Good Party, I'm sorry, I forgot about them, and Herman Mashaba's party are all putting people forward. What is the voting number of human beings in this area? Do we know? I asked you to remember the last time I was there with your registration weekend.
Absolutely. And there's 18,000 registered voters. The last,
even now?
Yeah, about that. We haven't seen the final number from the IEC. We're going to get that when we see the final voters roll. But at the last municipal elections in 2016, there was a voter turnout of 10,000. Now, I'm assuming with people's COVID anxiety, sorry, we might have less than that, unfortunately. But I think we need to make sure that, and there will be very good measures in place at all the voting stations to encourage people to come out and cast their vote, because every single vote does count. But I agree. I mean, it's going to be a very confusing ballot for people. There's a lot of names on there. So I've been in this position for just over 2 years now, and my undertaking when I came in was there was a lot of frustration around the connection with the city council, with the ward councillor previously, with feeling that community were not.
Is that Mr. Weber?
No.
Oh.
No. In between that, no, he was fantastic. So, and really feeling that lack of connection to the city council, that issues were not being addressed. There was no on the ground driving of issues that was happening here. So my undertaking was to be hands-on, on the ground, present with good communication and focus on communication and tackle the small issues while working on the big issues. And when those big issues don't have miracle turnaround solutions that go in a blink of an eye, they're suddenly removed from people's thought processes. So, and I feel over the last 2.5 years, bearing in mind we've had COVID, which is a black swan event that nobody would like to have in their lives.
Sorry, what did you say? What event?
Black swan.
A black swan event? I've never heard that. What does that mean?
It means, like a really large, unwanted, not catastrophe, but along those lines, something that really throws everybody off course.
Throws you for six.
Yes.
Okay.
And really takes away from what you're focusing on the basic service delivery, and makes you focus solely on another issue. So that's been half of my term as well. But I think, and I get that feedback regularly from residents. I get a lot of people who message me on a daily basis, really positive and appreciated the role I've played, the fact that I've been hands-on, present, and available in the ward, and dealing with issues on a hands-on basis. So I think that's one of the first steps, and that we need to carry on and continue dealing that way, being present and participating in the ward, and also dealing with the hard issues as well.
The other thing I want to ask you is, one of the things that people did inquire is safety at polling day. I think personal safety, in other words, will the police be there? Will there be security?
Yes.
And then COVID safety, are we all going to be sanitized and temperature raised and all the other Sea Point, Southeaster just arrived.
The Cape Doctor we have to deal
Cape
with.
Doctor, yeah, it's your fault, G. It's your fault, Nicola. Look, you see? I don't know what we're paying you for, Nicola. The wind, Nicola.
And umbrella doesn't come.
I know, right? I'm watching it like a hawk, but it's got a hectic concrete. Let's just show the people. It's got a hectic concrete alliance with the ground. So there you go. All right. So
safety.
First, personally, safety. In other words, people attacking people at voting stations and that sort of stuff.
So it's not something that we've seen happen here before. It's certainly not a part of voting stations, but there are always a risk, and it's a heated environment, of course. Certainly in the last by-election, I know I had a very strange experience when I was working on Ian McMahon's by-election, when the EFF decided to have let's say we had an altercation, and they threatened to shoot me, which was the first time I think I've been threatened in that way.
Let's just clarify that one more time. The economic freedom fighter political party threatened to shoot you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And and luckily I got most of that on video, audio recording. I reacted quite quickly, realizing this was an escalating situation. But that is really the anomaly that we've never seen, and I think it was obviously because of political party allegiance. That's why it came about. But the voting stations have always been safe. From a policing perspective, the police are there, law enforcement are there, they do rounds, they do checks, every single one of them. We see that throughout registration weekend as well, that they are checking, they have certain requirements about doing that, and they are there to also protect the ballots, to make sure the ballots
Because
are
people,
safe.
so there's no substitution of ballots.
Absolutely, yeah. And we also have party
Because
agents
this is a
in
literal
there.
physical piece of paper.
It is.
It's not
it is.
electronic
No,
press a
it's
button.
old school.
Yeah,
it's
it's old
paper in the box. So there is a high police presence in and around the area. There's a
So people
cordon.
can be calm. They're going to be safe.
They're going to be safe. There's always a cordon around, which is the area that belongs to the IEC, is under their jurisdiction, which we are not, as political parties, allowed into. And
I'm also not allowed in.
No, you're not.
I was
Media
told
either.
I'm allowed in to go and vote. I cannot film anybody.
Correct.
I cannot film anybody going. I can film people outside. I'm not allowed to ask anybody for whom they voted, but I am allowed to ask them what their experience was like.
Right.
So I received also some very serious guidelines.
Yeah.
So that means the IEC is not kidding around.
No, they're not kidding around. And look, there are always hiccups that happen on registration and voting weekend, and we always anticipate that. But there will be full COVID protocols in place. So, social distancing, sanitizing, and all the rest, and just try to keep it as safe as possible.
Okay, and if I can just segue for 5 seconds, Mr. Rob, you don't mind being live? May I introduce? Okay, you know who this person is, but everybody, this is Mr. Rob, local Sea Point resident. Mr. Rob, the people, Mr. Rob. You're live, sir, on multiple different networks and channels. So you had something to say to Nicola.
I do. Nicola, first of all, thank you very much. You helping us with that special vote. But an interesting debate when I belong to the Dementia SA group. And some of the folks were discussing this whole thing, whether a person with dementia is capable of voting. And that's what I want to perhaps just ask you.
It's a very good question because so my mother had dementia as well, so I understand very well and very intimately the horror of the disease and how robbing it is of and for you as well as for your wife. But at what point can a person no longer vote? And I think that's a very interesting question because we do have elderly and frail people as well who have assistance with when they cast their vote. They either have a carer who gives assistance to them, or if you come into a voting station, you can also ask the IEC for assistance in casting your vote, which can be quite a controversial thing. And that's why, as political parties, we have observers in the voting station. And when that situation happens,
You are independent.
No, they are political party representatives.
Oh, so
Democratic Alliance.
Democratic Alliance will be there. The ANC will be
Absolutely.
there.
As a political party, you are entitled to have a party agent there. If you choose not to, that's up to you. So in a circumstance where a voter says to the IEC, I need assistance in casting my vote, whether it's I can't read properly, I'm shaking too much, or for whatever reason, the IEC will give assistance, and those party agents will come and monitor that process to make sure that whatever the voter has represented to the IEC and what they want to have reflected on the ballot is actually done. So if they're saying I want to vote for the pink party, that the IEC doesn't go and put there on the gold party. But they make sure that person. But when it comes to a person not able to actually physically say which party it is, then it is very tricky. And I'm not sure 100% on the guidance of that, but I think if a family member is there, they would still take it if they felt that person was at least able to represent to their family member what it is that who they wanted to vote for.
So that means that Rob has to go with.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
And I think then explain to the officials.
Yes.
I mean, obviously you're allowed to ask for their help.
You are allowed to ask.
No, you are allowed to ask. Are you not? As the current councillor,
yes.
ask for help.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we at the voting stations also always go to IEC, so we will facilitate as much as we can without interfering with the process. So we would alert the IEC to say, this voter needs assistance. We will alert the IEC the voter needs help walking into the voting station. If the voter is not able to walk themselves and wants to stay in the car, we will go and tell the IEC and ask them to come out to the car, which they will do as well, and cast the ballot at the car. And we will alert them to say that this person does need assistance in actually marking their ballot. And then our party agents inside would monitor that process to make sure it's still free and fair while that person is getting assistance.
Okay. Are you happy with that, Rob?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions for the local ward councillor of Sea Point, Ms. Nicola Jowell? As a Sea Point resident, I mean, far be it from me to throw anyone in the deep end, but do you have any questions?
Well, one thing I want to also say to you, I find that this process of allowing every Tom, Dick and Harry to have their own little party, that to me favours the ANC ultimately. You know what I mean?
Rob, you're saying exactly what the DA has been putting out in the political message, and I promise I didn't invite him
No,
to
no,
come
you
here
didn't.
and say
No, no,
that.
hang on. Let me just change cameras. Hang on. Guys, I can absolutely attest that is not a setup. This all just happened. Rob is here every day, but this is the first time he has ever come into a broadcast. And so that is, I think, a legit question. Huh?
It's a very,
Very
legit
legit
question,
question.
because it is on people's minds exactly that. And I think it's a very good question, because so what various political parties do, you see people spring up you've never heard of before, and they might put one person to stand as a ward councillor in 116 wards, the same person. And that
I
same
don't
person,
understand that. How does that work?
I'll explain. That same person is then also on the PR ballot. So when the votes are all added together, and that person may get 5 votes in each of the 116 wards, when it's all added together, what they're hoping for is that
Is
person
35
gets
votes.
is they're hoping to get enough just to get one PR seat in the council. They don't think
So
they're going to
this is
win the ward.
machination, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you've got that one dynamic playing out, and then you've got a second and we do have a sitting councillor from a party in the council at the moment who actually did that. And then you have other issues where it's just political parties are trying to get as much support, and it is distracting and taking away from a core support base. So if you're taking away 1,000 votes from one political party and spreading them out over 10 parties, each getting 100,
Yeah.
you really are
Well,
diluting the
1,000
power
in
and the
Seapoint
ability.
is just under 10%.
Cape Town and the residents in any way. And I think we would find the city of Cape Town stepping back considerably. Um, if the coalition was the DA with another smaller party to edge over the majority line, coalition politics is extremely difficult. It's possible, but extremely difficult because ultimately you're making compromises in what you believe as a party is the best way to run the city and the priorities of your party. And we've seen the disaster of coalition politics around the country, where those coalitions then fall apart and so cities fall apart. I mean, municipalities are not moving forward, they're stagnating and moving backwards because they're stuck in this limbo of a coalition. So I agree. Uh, Vociferous and vocal opposition is important for everybody. But I think that the ability to run a city and run it effectively, and I'm going to say it, Cape Town works. But I do like our because it works, we need to keep on doing more. So nobody's saying Cape Town is perfect or anything along those lines, but the city of Cape Town works, and let's take it to another level. And we can do that. We can't do it if we're having to compromise and fiddle around with small parties who are really just interested in getting
Are you
a few
saying that
jobs.
it's an impediment, ultimately,
It depends on your
to the
coalition.
functional efficacy of government?
It depends on your coalition and who your coalition partners are. But if you're having to make compromises and say, all right, we will compromise on this area in favor of that, you're already saying we're not governing the part of the city in the way we feel is the best way to do it. Plus, you're always under the threat of a coalition partner pulling out. And then you are back to square one and having to renegotiate mayors and renegotiate MACO members, and really spending more time renegotiating those things than actually dealing with the city and the service delivery issues of the city. And that's the crucial thing that we need to be focusing on.
Mr. Rob, are you happy with that answer?
Very much so, thank you. You know, I've had the privilege of knowing when it was the Progressive Party, and I've seen it grow and have its bumps and ups and downs, but I've watched that party grow into becoming something so dynamic, so exciting, you know, that and you know, there's always that old in the racing, you want to back the winning horse, and that has been my goal. I want to again just go back to my wife. You folks are coming either the 30th or the 31st. You see it now. Do you need to know now? about her situation.
So no, the IEC will. I think we set you up for a home vote.
Yes.
Yes. So the IEC will come on one of those days, a Saturday or a Sunday. Unfortunately, we don't decide when they do it. We've got a lot. We've got 480 special votes registered for the weekend. The majority of those are early votes coming into the voting session, which I think is fantastic. People took up the call to register for an early vote so they could avoid a bit of the congestion on election day. And then we've got a lot, about 240 home votes that are set up for election the weekend. So the IEC will go through the list. We've made them aware that a lot of people are not keen for religious reasons to vote on the Sabbath, on the Saturday, and we've asked to try them to be very mindful of that. But we cannot guarantee when they will be coming out on
So
the
we
weekend.
just need to be very clear that there is just one single day of voting, right?
There's one single day, the 1st of November, the voting stations open at 7 and close at 9 o'clock. But if you have registered for an early vote, and that closed already on the 4th of October, if you've registered for that early vote, then it's on the Saturday and the Sunday. But there's no, I'm being contacted every day by people who are trying to get an early vote or a home vote. And unfortunately, at this point, there's nothing we can do. It is closed. But the people who are registered already, they'll be on the Saturday and the Sunday.
But it's Monday, the vote.
The big vote is Monday. Correct.
Am I invited to come to the Sea Point High space outside and without interfering in anybody's politics with Nicola to ask you for your opinion as how the day is going?
James, you're always welcome.
Oh,
You're always
Nicola.
welcome.
It's almost as if we've been interviewing each other for years.
Of course.
And it is because we've been interviewing
People-
each other for years.
Exactly. People start talking. But
I
no,
know,
you're
right?
always welcome. Always welcome. And I love voting day. It's exciting. It's dynamic. There's lots going on. There's people in and out. There's, as political parties, you're not actually allowed to canvass on voting day. You are there to help and to guide and to answer questions, but you're not supposed to be canvassing. At that point, there's been a lot of phone calls and Facebook messages and videos and everything going around, and voters are there then to cast their vote in peace. But it's a lovely day. It's a long day. We're there.
What time does it start?
Well, for us, we're there early in the morning. Voting poll stations open at 7 a.m. and they close at 9 p.m. and we stay on as part of
That's
the
a
count.
hell of a day.
Yeah, we stay on as part of the count, and until we are satisfied that we are happy that the count is accurate, we will be there.
Okay. And then, one sentence, okay? People should vote for Nicola Jowell in Ward 54 because...
Hands-on, honest leadership of the ward, dealing with on-the-ground issues and being present and part of the community and addressing the issues of concern that are of concern to the community.
Did you pre-write that?
Never.
Okay, and finally, no more questions, Mr. Rob, you're
No more
okay?
questions.
Okay, great. And then finally, as always, you know how I always end my broadcasts. Do you have hope?
I have lots of hope. I have lots of hope.
Why?
I believe in the city. I believe in my colleagues who are part of it. I believe in our mayoral candidate, Jordan Hill Lewis. I'm very excited.
Oh, hang on. Anonymous Facebook user. That's weird. How does the DA keep their councillors accountable to the constituents?
So it's a great question. So we're required to report on a monthly basis to our. We all have a assistant chief whip who we report to. So there are smaller whip groups in the party. So we report to our chief whips and our constituency head.
Like teachers report to a principal at a school.
Totally. And our constituency head on a monthly basis who look at our performance in terms of how many engagements we're having with our community members, that we're attending meetings, that we are giving feedback, that we're answering emails and
So if
doing
your
those sort of things.
sorry to interrupt, but if your ward councillor is lazy and isn't answering messages and doesn't reply to emails, you can then complain to?
You complain to the Speaker of the Council.
Okay, and then that is a legitimate way
Absolutely.
for you to engage with leadership.
Yeah, that's your first point of call, to go to the Speaker of Council with written
All
complaints.
parties.
All parties.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So basically, you go,
investigate.
hey, this particular person who represents that particular party is not listening to me.
Yeah, correct. Not listening, not replying, not dealing with an issue. And then they will investigate and take the necessary steps and revert back to the person who's made the
You
complaint
don't,
as well.
for example, threaten to shoot them in the face.
No, you don't. Definitely not. No,
Yeah.
No.
Not that we point fingers at anybody at all, but we're
No,
just
no.
saying.
Rather deal with something through dialogue and engagement than violence.
Or come on to one of my broadcasts and ask the person a question. Is the
Correct.
other way to do it.
Correct.
And you know what? I'm actually going to do this with Mr. Rob. He didn't even know. Mr. Rob, do you have hope for the country, for the city, for everything? Do you have hope?
I absolutely do.
Can you tell us why?
Well, as I said to Nicola, I have been with the party since its Progressive Party days.
The
And I've
PFP.
seen the PFP, and I've seen even before that, even before the PFP.
Old
as well
Helen
as the press.
Swisman.
That's right, yes.
Black Sash.
Yes, I've seen them grow and they've had their hiccups and all that, but what they've become today is a dynamic party that cares for all its constituents. That makes me very happy and confident.
Gives you hope.
Gives me hope, yes.
So you don't want to move to Joburg?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Just checking. Or Durban?
No.
Petermaritzburg, Bloemfontein, Port Elizabeth,
I've
East
lived
London?
in most of the cities.
And your answer is no.
No,
You want to stay in Cape Town?
absolutely.
Okay. Let's do a travel and tourism thing. People should visit Cape Town, says Rob, because
Because it offers you everything that you need. Everything that you need in the way of comfort, the way of adventure, the way of tourism, the way of places that you can relax with friends, and all the dynamics of a city that is alive with hope.
I think that somebody should be on Cape Town Tourism's advisory board. That's all I'm
Absolutely. I
saying.
think no one could have answered that better.
That was brilliant. That was brilliant, Sir Rob. Very, very brilliant.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything to wrap up with?
I just want to say, I
Yeah.
think just picking up what Rob was saying is that, that sense of hope. That the things in Cape Town, how beautiful the city is, how it's filled with all these amazing things, and there's more to be done, and we need to keep tackling that more. And there's no perfect political party. As you say, there's hiccups. Everybody has hiccups. Everybody makes mistakes, gets it wrong. But it's acknowledging those, and it's like saying, let's do more, let's get it right, let's make it better, and for everybody in Cape Town. And I'm excited to be part of that process. I'm excited the idea of Jordan, who I think has got the right ideas.
Sorry, to explain to people, that is Jordan Hill
Lewis,
Lewis.
who's our mayoral candidate.
Was on my profile. Was on my channels.
Absolutely. That we're heading and continuing to head in the right direction. That's really exciting.
And Mr. Rob, any final thoughts?
Well, just wanted to say thank you for the privilege of being able to meet you face to face, and thank you so much for what you've done for this war. Very, very confident in you, and know that there's great things ahead for you and for us. Thank you very much.
Wow.